be the number one concern.
Hang on, Peter.
For the country.
Looks like President of the United States has tested positive for COVID-19. This puts us in all new territory.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And the US election just gets wilder and wilder. That Trump bombshell landed in the USA at 1 o'clock on Friday morning, and some in America did not know whether to believe it, while others were quite sure they didn't. And remarkably, even some in the media wanted a bob each way, as the ABC's former Washington correspondent observed on Twitter.
Interesting language from several in the US media along the lines of Trump says he and Melania have tested positive to COVID, rather than reporting as fact. Sign of the times.
And on Fox and Friends, they were outraged that it should be so.
Let me read for you, Joe, a tweet from Joy Reid, who's a host on MSNBC. Here's how wrecked Trump's credibility is at this point. I've got a cell phone full of people giving me texts who aren't sure whether to believe Trump actually has COVID. So, Joe, what we see here is the next level, conspiracy.
One of the many theories lighting up social media was that Trump was faking the virus. And an even crazier idea was that his political enemies were trying to bring him down.
Tweets, shared thousands of times, claim Democrats might have somehow intentionally infected the president with the coronavirus during the debates.
But when it came to finding out what was going on, it was almost as hard to get at the truth. At first, we're told he was fine, his symptoms were mild. Then suddenly he had a fever and he was off to hospital.
Marine One lifting up off the south lawn of the White House. President Trump being transferred tonight to the Walter Reed Military Medical Center.
Then it emerged he'd been given oxygen, and his chief of staff briefed reporters privately that his path to recovery was not clear and the next 48 hours would be critical. After which, we heard from the president himself in hospital.
I came here, wasn't feeling so well. I feel much better now.
But as Tens the Project noted, that message came in the midst of chaos and confusion and suspicion that we weren't being told the truth.
Right now, he is not on oxygen.
I know you keep saying right now, but should we read into the fact that he had been previously?
Yesterday and today, he was not on oxygen.
So he has not been on it during his COVID treatment?
He's not on oxygen right now.
So, that was Saturday, Washington time. And was that right? Well, not exactly, as the ABC's David Lipson reported on Sunday.
Yesterday they were evasive and were actually giving blatant mistruths out because the president's own physician had said yesterday that he had not been given oxygen the day before. Well, today he's saying, well, in fact, he had been given oxygen.
So, how did the doctors explain that away?
I was trying to reflect the upbeat attitude that the team, the president, that his course of illness has had. Didn't want to give any information that might steer the course of illness in another direction, and in doing so, it came off that we were trying to hide something, which wasn't necessarily true.
Amazing. We also discovered the president was on a range of drugs that indicated he might have lung damage and be quite sick. But then we were assured he was getting better and could be out tomorrow. And this morning, Australian time, Donald Trump emerged briefly from hospital in a big black motorcade to reassure his supporters.
He did a drive-by on one side of the street, did a U-turn and came by the other side of the street. He was waving, very animated and giving people a thumbs up.
Yes, a wave from the armoured car to show his fighting spirit. And never mind the risk of spreading the virus further. As one outraged doctor attending the Walter Reed Hospital tweeted out,
"Every single person in the vehicle during that completely unnecessary presidential drive-by just now has to be quarantined for 14 days. They might get sick. They may die for political theatre, commanded by Trump to put their lives at risk for theatre. This is insanity."
Yes, insanity is a good word for describing the mayhem we've seen in the US presidential race these last few days, which less than 1 week ago, you've probably forgotten, had us all reeling at the rudeness of the great debate.
47 years you've done nothing.
You're the worst president America has ever had.
He graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
Everybody knows he's a liar.
Joe, you're the liar. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
That unedifying slanging match was taken live by 7, 9, Sky and the ABC, and followed up with lashings of political analysis, with most pundits giving the win to Biden, if only because he didn't fall off the stage. But in the search for new insights, another trusty expert was wheeled into action.
From the facial expressions to the hand actions, our body language expert reveals who was really telling the truth.
Yes, the body language expert, always available to highlight the signs you may have missed.
Generally, he was typical Donald Trump. He's only got a fairly limited repertoire. He uses his hands a lot to point at people. And Joe Biden, as a guy who sometimes he looked like the video had paused. He wasn't moving at all.
You have to laugh. And Seven's morning show was also in on the act with its own body expert breaking it down.
Trump is just such a bully. He just doesn't abide to any rules. He rejects Biden by gesturing towards him but looking at Wallace, which of course is disrespectful.
It was a busy week for Louise Mahler, who was also on ABC Hobart, where she suggested Joe Biden is suffering from a neurological issue.
I noticed that he would do the wrong mouth shape for the word he was trying to say. And that said to me there's some sort of disconnection, a neural disconnection.
And Sky News also had her on to make the same point.
There's actually a name from it where the nerves aren't working properly and the mouth isn't forming for the words that are being spoken. And this is very worrying.
It may well be, but another name for it could be stutter, which is something Joe Biden's worked his whole life to overcome. So, what else is new? Well, the media's love affair with so-called body language experts knows no bounds. And 2 weeks ago, it was state premiers being dissected.
In terms of the exact dates.
Faking it. He's faking it.
There was a sense of any confusion.
That's an interesting ploy.
These are difficult decisions.
That's what we call a distress signal. Here, clearly hiding something. You notice licking his lips. He knows what the question is.
Yes, it's as ridiculous as it is entertaining. And no public figure is too big or too small to avoid the treatment, as a very busy Louise Mahler knows. Here she is on Sunrise last week, breaking down those royal rebels, Harry and Meghan.
He's got this tension on his mouth and he's chewing and biting his mouth. And then his hands are going berserk. This is massive jaw tension, grinding of the teeth. This is a fight.
What a load of nonsense. And let's not forget, it was body language experts who helped convince Australians that Lindy Chamberlain and Joanne Leese were guilty. But now, let's go to Chris Kenny, who just loves to take pot shots at the ABC and was at it again 10 days ago on Sky News over Auntie's apparent failure to follow up this Australian exclusive.
Citizens detaining fellow citizens a bridge too far. Jurists.
18 legal figures have come together to sign an open letter in a withering attack warning that the bill endangers Victorians' freedoms.
It was a good story, a revolt against Dan Andrews' proposal to empower authorised citizens to detain fellow members of the public if they thought they posed a COVID risk. And after showing how well the rest of the media covered the story, Chris Kenny set about denouncing the ABC for avoiding it.
But when it came to the ABC, we couldn't find any mention of the story. How odd, given the standing of the legal figures and the threat to civil liberties. When expert voices object to draconian laws proposed by Australia's most left-wing government, the ABC muzzles itself. I keep telling you, no one is in charge at the ABC.
Chris Kenny then invited his panel of fellow News Corp journalists to skewer the public broadcaster.
Jack, how could they ignore such a significant story?
We're really in a very strange post-truth world where something which is probably the most significant story for Victorians is completely ignored.
But was it completely ignored? And was Chris Kenny right? No and no. On the day the Australian published its exclusive, ABC Radio Melbourne was leading its morning show with the story.
One of the signatories to that letter is Michael Borski QC. Michael Borski, welcome to the program.
The interview went for 9 minutes, with Michael Borski telling listeners why the proposed laws were a horrible idea.
It's unprecedented to authorise citizens to detain their fellow citizens. These powers are just excessive and too open to abuse, and they ought not be passed.
Borski's comments were briefly picked up by ABC Online. And on the same morning, RN Breakfast was giving the story national coverage, interviewing Victorian Upper House member Fiona Patten.
This is extraordinary, and it seems absolutely excessive, and I haven't seen any evidence that we need this expansion of powers.
And just for good measure, her comments were turned round for Victoria's 10 a.m. radio bulletin.
Fiona Patten has raised concerns about measures of an omnibus bill before Parliament.
So, all in all, the story was not ignored, and the ABC had not muzzled itself to protect a left-wing government, as Kenny had claimed. So, Chris, next time you slam the public broadcaster and ask,
how could they ignore such a significant story?
Maybe you could do some research first. But now, time for a quiz. See if you can spot the ad masquerading as TV news. And let's go first to last week's big sugar hit.
Well, chocolate fans have been sent into a frenzy with Violent Crumble releasing its own flavoured milk. The new blend will be served up nationwide, and if customers approve, it could stay on shelves permanently.
Exciting stuff, with 10 and 9 running multiple news reports around the country, and newsreaders licking their lips through the read.
All right, now to what I think is the story of the day. One of the country's oldest chocolate bars has had a dramatic transformation.
The sweet treat hitting shelves around the country this week.
That's awesome. I'm happy to try it.
So, with endorsements like that, it has to be an ad, right? Well, no. That's what you call earned media. The chocolatiers put out a press release, and journalists around the country gobble it up. Is it news? No way. Is it entertaining? Well, sure, if that's your thing. And what about this plug in August, which was another for the purple-wrapped treat?
Famous South Aussie sweet treat, the Violet Crumble, has taken on a new life. It's now in donut form, with maker Robin Menz teaming up with Krispy Kreme.
And what about that one? Was that an ad? No, again. Just 7 news giving viewers the treat they think they want. But now for Crumble question 3, which is a bit more difficult, about this cook-up on 10's Studio 10 last month.
So today I'm making a cheats version of an eclair using the brand new caramel violet crumble, which is delicious.
Ooh, where do we start?
Whoa.
Yes, they loved the crumble too. And how did they come up with the idea?
Well, the basis of just having that beautiful caramel violet crumble just made all the juices start flowing in my mind.
Really? Branded dessert? Branded apron? Plugs for the website? Surely that's an ad. And yes, at last, this time, 10 was smart enough to pick up some cash. And a disclosure? Nowhere in the segment. But if you lasted 2 hours until the end of the show, there it was, buried in the credits mysteriously as a reference to Robin Menz, makers of the chocolate bar. Pathetic, isn't it? So how can we know what we're watching? Well, if it looks like an ad, it probably is. Except, of course, when it's not. Confused? So are we. And here's another example. On 9 last Tuesday, in Brisbane, Sydney, Adelaide and Perth, you'd have seen this plug smack bang in the middle of the 6 o'clock news.
It's been a better than expected year for farmers, and there's currently an abundance of meat, so Coles is slashing its prices.
What followed is one of the more remarkable things we've seen in a TV news bulletin. A retailer's catalogue brought to life on air.
Coles is slashing their prices. From tomorrow, you can get 230 grams of rump steak for $5. 500 grams of pork loin steak is 15% off, down to $8.50, while you can also pick up a pack of honey and soy chicken kebabs for $9.50.
Yes, a roll call of prices with barely a news hook and not a single mention of anyone else in the market. Extraordinary. And we weren't the only ones surprised. A retail rival couldn't believe Coles' luck. And one TV executive competitor told us it was, quote, highly unusual. No kidding. So was that a paid ad? Amazingly, no. Coles told us it put out a press release on cheap meat and had no idea Nine would run it in that form. And why on earth would they? Surely viewers of the flagship 6 o'clock bulletin deserve better than that. That's all from us tonight. There's more on our website where you can download the programme. And don't forget, Media Bites every Thursday on your favourite social media platform. But for now, until next week, goodbye.